Sherman Kareem, and I'm representing the Rhode Island Hospitality Association. I'm actually representing another group on another bill, but I'll take them one at a time. But the first comment I do have to mention, because I'm going off script, because the prior speaker talked about, but for the employee. I would say, but for the employer, the individual who has a dream and starts a business. How? By going to a bank, financing, maybe putting another mortgage on his or her house, living with the regulations we have in this state, living with the cost of doing business in this state. But for that person, he wouldn't have the jobs. They wouldn't be there. So it's a combination. We need the employee, but the employees need the employer too at the same time. And that's how it works. Not like was just said. Anyway, with regard to the minimum wage, I just did some calculations, and if the wage was increased to $10, and the Senate Department was pretty good with numbers if I remember correctly, so he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but if the minimum wage was increased to $10.50 an hour, and I believe DLT has stated there are 78,000 working at minimum wage. I don't know what that's true or not, but if you take that at the 90 cent increase and just factor in, say, 20 hours a week and say only 26 weeks a year, they're going to come up with, I think, 36 million plus as the cost passed on to the business community. And that's only taken in short numbers. The governor's budget calls for a increase to be effective October 1, 2017. I haven't seen that really in a minimum wage bill, and I've been around a long time, that date. 510 would increase it, but anyway, 287, Senate Bill 287, would increase it by July 1, 2017, right in midstream. And many in the hospitality industry have already lined up employees and factored in their costs for the summer months. So, business needs a predictive business model to be successful. And this is, especially if any increase is going to take effect, becoming effective at that time is not going to help them. It also is going to create additional paperwork and payroll issues for small businesses. Let's remember that according to, I believe, DLT, 81.6% of Rhode Island employers employ less than 10 individuals. And it's not hard to find those individuals because they're right in the business themselves. And 90.1% employ less than 20 employees. And they're not the fat cats that you hear. Also, economics have shown that small businesses are more likely to be impacted by a wage increase. And it's going to definitely impact, and we all know family-owned businesses in the state. It's going to definitely impact them. Many of those people, as I said before, have mortgages on the property, maybe a second mortgage, a line of credit, just to continue to operate a business, something they want to do because it's their dream, their passion. You've heard about the studies, economic studies. Well, there are economic studies and there are economic studies. I don't know why, but in this particular area, you have experts saying it's going to have an impact, and there are experts saying it's not going to have an impact. I think that's one of the reasons why we should have that study commission, to try and find out exactly what is the impact. There are too many variables to say it's only because of, by increasing the wage and you don't see a drop in wages, in employment, all that. It's not that simple. It's much more. So we should have an economic impact analysis. As you heard, the minimum wage was increased in 2016. That would be the fifth increase since 2013, 35% increase in 5 years. This is making it very difficult and unpredictable for businesses, especially small businesses in the state, to operate. You know, wages, just like the price, are not the only thing going up, business expense going up. Their rent, they don't all own their property. Food costs, dramatic increases in some areas. Energy costs, we know what that is, et cetera, all go to the bottom line and impact the bottom line. This industry is a critical provider of employment in Rhode Island. It's a very labor-intensive industry, no question about it. About a third of the sales go to wages and benefits. Pre-tax profit margins for restaurants typically range between 3 to 6%. And if this passes, and the myriad of the bills, then, they're going to have to make some decisions about hiring in the young, increase in their prices, but they only can increase the prices so much. The customers can only take so much. Cut employer hours, not give some more increased benefits and wage increases to other employees. It's an issue. There's no question about it. And let's not also forget the minimum wage is tied it's not just wages. Your workers' compensation, your unemployment compensation, part of your Social Security, they're paid for by the employer. Unemployment insurance and workers' compensation are 100% paid for by the employer. So when you increase that, that's going up too. And Rhode Island is one of the highest, if not the highest in the country as far as the unemployment insurance. So there are other impacts, other things to consider. Even today, at 960, we're one of the highest in the nation. I would think we're somewhere probably in the top 10 as far as states the minimum wage. And I'm going to cut this part short because I want to get on to the tip wages. But as far as I also represent the Rhode Island lumber dealers, I did submit written testimony, but many of those are family-owned operations, and talk about having to finance and be on the hook for loans. Their industry has been so volatile over the last few years. It's been very difficult. And let's not forget that being a retailer, time and a half on Sunday has an increase. So anyway, we want to remain competitive. We want to pay our fair share, but you got to look at the whole picture. Rhode Island does not have the best reputation nationwide. We're making some strides, no question about it, but it's still, all the polls that come out, the reputable polls, where studies were not near the top. As far as gratuities bills, there are two bills, and I'll cut it short. 507 would raise the minimum wage for tip workers by 50 cents per year until the tip minimum wage is now less than 2/3 of the regular minimum wage. 510 would incrementally, that was 510. 57 would incrementally increase the current $3.89 per hour sub-minimum wage for tip workers to $9 per hour on January 1, 2020, and starting then it would go up until it equals the state's minimum wage. One of the bills would, as I said, there's going to be a substantial increase. One of them actually would go to $15 an hour by 2026. This is again problematic. As I said, the tip wage right now is $3.89 per hour. But this does not mean tip wage employees, and that's sometimes thought about only are paid $3.89. Federal and state law requires that if a server does not make at least the minimum wage in tips and cash wage, the employer must compensate them for the difference. And there are strong laws to that effect, and we support those laws. If these bills were to pass it's going to result in our restaurant owners dramatically changing their business models. Some may be forced to cut staff, eliminate tipping completely, because there's going to be an increase in the menu prices. And customers will only pay so much. You and I will only pay so much. They're going to hurt the business. Many times the tipped employees are the highest paid employees in the business. Think about it. As a matter of fact, research from the National Restaurant Association shows that on average, tipped employees make between $16 to $22 an hour. That's well beyond any increase we're talking about here. Tipped employees' wages have not remained stagnant. Since a tip is usually calculated based on the cost of the meal, every time the menu prices go up, so does the wage of the tipped employee. And if you ask most, if not all, servers and bartenders, would they rather have a flat $15 per hour wage and no tips, or $3.89 with tips, the overwhelming response, and it's been done, is going to be keep the tip wage system in effect. It's going to have some negative implications. Lastly, on the opportunity wage, we believe that this is one way of encouraging employers to hire the teenagers, by allowing them to pay new employees 75% of the state's minimum wage for the first 680 hours or 90 days of employment. And this is not just seasonal. There are countless high school students working in Rhode Island, right in the neighborhood that I live in. I live on the east side. But there are a lot of young men working in those stores around the area. One of the unintended consequences of higher minimum wage is employers may be less likely to hire teenagers because they don't have any experience, and it's going to cost them even more. A report from the J.P. Morgan in May 2016 finds that summer employment rate for teenagers is nearing a record low of 34%. The report surveyed 15 U.S. cities and found that despite an increase in summer positions available over a 2-year period, only 38% of teens and young adults found summer jobs. Believe it or not, 1 of 3 Americans started in a restaurant business, worked in a restaurant business. I did. It was my second job. 1 out of 2 Americans have worked or will work in the industry during their lifetime. The hospitality industry has a responsibility to provide opportunities to employees in Rhode Island by teaching work ethics, skills needed to be a leader in almost any industry, teamwork, because in a restaurant a lot of times you work together, communication skills, and interacting with one another. We believe it would encourage employers to hire teenagers and train them to be regular employers. And by the way, 23 states have a youth and/or training wage in the country, and Massachusetts is currently considering the very same legislation. That's it. Sorry for taking so much time, but I wanted to get through it. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Terry, the same question I had asked Elizabeth. If you can provide us the same kind of information about the negative impact on businesses when the minimum wage is going up the last 2 times, that would be good. Be appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.